All right, thank you, everybody. It's about 6:30, so we will get started. I'm Lisa Hart. I'm with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Super excited about this evening's meeting. I'm going to start by sharing a few slides. So bear with me. Okay, there we are. Oops. Okay, so please introduce yourselves in the chat, and please also feel free to add your neighborhood council or organization next to your name and pronouns in your Zoom name. And in the chat, feel free to add your name, pronouns, neighborhood council or organization, and what brought you here today. The mission of the NCSA is to advance sustainability and resilience across LA through advocacy, sharing of best practices, and community action. We have a variety of committees and working groups, and if you stay with us until the end, you'll hear report backs from most of these committees this evening. And you're always welcome. Any stakeholder in LA is welcome to join us, and that they're all open. And if you're a stakeholder, you have a say in the committees. Housekeeping, we are recording this. You can use the raise hand feature to participate later in the meeting. This first portion of the meeting will not be that discussion oriented. It will be really a discussion between the candidates and the moderator. We have community agreements that I'll walk you through in a minute, and it's really important that you follow those. And we actually have some folks here tonight who are prepared to remove anybody who does not follow them. When I get an opportunity, I will put a link to our evaluation form in the chat. We'll also put our community agreements in the chat, and we'd love to hear what you thought about the meeting, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd suggest for future meetings. So please do take a minute to complete that eval if you can. Our agenda tonight is this stuff, which we're going to wrap up in about a minute. And then we will hear from the candidates for Council District 13. We'll discuss the draft wildlife ordinance, and those who are voting representatives will vote on that this evening, we hope. There's a new proposal from the LA Zoo, which we will not vote on tonight, but which we will discuss tonight. There's a new draft ordinance regarding oil drilling and banning that. So we'll discuss that tonight. And then we'll hear from our committees and other programming, and we'll allow an opportunity for anybody to make an announcement. And once again, I hope you folks can provide us an evaluation. Here are our community agreements. These are super important, and we do ask you to follow them. You can, if you're able to, and I know not everybody's able to, but it's great if you can turn on your camera and show your face, because that's one of the ways we build community. Assume good intent and give people the benefit of the doubt. Demonstrate respect and appreciation. Refrain from having too many side conversations in the chat. The chat is open, but we do hope that it stays on target. And we will be monitoring the chat, so you know. Listen intently. And then for the parts when we're all able to talk, we invite you to step forward and step back, and to be as concise as possible. And of course, to have fun, because, you know, really at the end of the day, having fun is pretty important. Okay. So a couple other things. I'd like to introduce a couple people, and then Scott, I'll introduce you last, I think. Muriel, could you please introduce yourself?
Hi, everybody. I'm Muriel Nakar. I am a steering board member for the NCSA. I am also the chair for the Transportation Committee.
And she's going to be tonight, she'll be wearing a few hats. She'll be monitoring the chat, and we'll also be changing your voters. Then can you say that?
Oh, don't change it back, everyone. I need to change your name so I could tally how many people will be voting for who will be voting or not voting. So please don't change it.
Thank you. And I'd like to introduce Lionel. Lionel, could you say a couple words about yourself?
Yes, good evening. My name is Lionel Mares. I am a neighborhood council board member, and I'm also a member with the Neighborhood Council Sustainability Alliance. Excuse me. So glad to meet you.
And he will be helping monitor the chat this evening. And thank you, Lionel. And Glenn.
Want me to say hello? So,
Yes, thank you.
Glenn Bailey started off 20 years ago, actually, this year with the Encino Neighborhood Council. And I'm also on the Northridge East Neighborhood Council, and I've been involved with several of the alliances, including this one, the Valley Alliance and LA Neighborhood Council Coalition, and the Neighborhood Council Budget Advocates.
Great, thank you. And now I will hand it over to Scott, if you could introduce yourself. What's wrong?
Oh, he's mute.
But did I not unmute him? I think I unmuted him. Do I need to do that again? Okay. Interesting. Let me try to do that. Let me remove the spotlight. That'll make it easier to figure out. Okay. Great.
Got it. Sorry about that. Okay, nice to see everyone. My name is Scott Epstein. I'm the former chair of the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council. I was the chair there for 7 years, and I'm a steering board member here at NCSA, and also just completed a city council run for CD5. Wonderful to be with you, and thank you, Councilmember O'Farrell and Mr. Soto Martinez for being with us tonight and engaging with our stakeholders. We really appreciate your time. So tonight we are going to start with 1-minute introductions. Then we'll go to a series of questions. The first one will be 90 seconds because it's a bit broader. The remaining questions will likely be just 1 minute, unless I say differently. I may take the opportunity to ask you a follow-up question if that would be illuminating for our stakeholders. And if you feel the need to rebut something that your opponent says, that is also a privilege that you can ask for. So just let me know. Please be sort of sparing on that, but if your name is invoked or something like that, understandable, and we do want to be able to engage and for this conversation to be illuminating for our stakeholders. So without further ado, we will start with 1-minute statements. Yes, okay, Lisa will be doing time by showing her phone. We will be juggling the order, and for the opening statements, we'll start with Councilmember O'Farrell. So I guess as soon as we see Lisa's phone.
Oh, okay, fair enough.
You can start.
All right, fair enough.
Terrific. Thank you. Thanks for having us, Lisa, and to the entire team and the Sustainability Alliance. It's great to join you. Mitch O'Farrell, I've been a lifelong environmentalist. From the time I was a kid and my family lived next to a creosote site where they were soaking telephone poles for future use. I'm being sickened by that as a young child to the time we lived next to a burning heap of tires. This is personal for me. As chair of the City Council's Climate Change, Environmental Justice, Los Angeles River, and Energy Committee, I have been consistently leading the charge on urgent policy and pushing out consistent policy initiatives to end fossil fuel purchases, to modernize our grid for an electric future, and to eliminate all petroleum uses. And we're making real headway, and we're going to do even more in the next term. Thank you.
Thank you, Council Member. Mr. Soto Martinez, you can start when, there we go.
Oops, something happened. Sorry, I screwed something up. Okay, 1 Okay, I have to stop something and try to start it so it will be normal.
Do you want me to do it on my phone and I can just give them like?
No, sorry. No, I'm ready. Okay, sorry.
Good enough.
Thank you so much, Lisa. My name is Hugo Soto Martinez. I've been a lifelong Angelino, born and raised here in the city, very proudly. For the last 16 years, I've worked my entire adult life. I've worked with Unite Here Local 11, an amazing labor union that has worked at the intersection of so many issues, including housing and environment. Been part of passing citywide laws like raising the citywide minimum wage, regulating Airbnb, and have traveled nationally and won amazing elections. I was in Arizona when we got rid of Sheriff Joe Arpaio after 22 years of terrorizing that community. I decided to run because despite the work that we do and how we change people's life, it's simply not enough. Whether it's climate, housing, homelessness, public safety, what I think we all feel is a city that has not acted with the kind of urgency that is required. And so I'm trying to bring my experience as a union organizer, bringing people in through collaboration and working together to make sure that we push folks in City Hall to do the right thing and really act with that urgency that's needed. And so very happy here to explain my plan and my values. Thank you, Scott.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we're going to go to questions now. I want to just thank our stakeholders who submitted a lot of wonderful questions. We're going to start with one that's a bit broad and give you 90 seconds to respond because it's central to our mission here. So this is a question submitted by one of our stakeholders. The climate has already changed and is getting worse by the day. The wildfires and heat waves are already seriously impacting Angelinos. The water shortage puts LA at existential risk. What have you already done to mitigate climate emissions, and what will you do next? And we'll start this time with Mr. Soto Martinez.
Sure. So this is without a doubt the existential crisis, right? And if you talk to environmentalists, I think the idea is how are we going to mitigate? Right, the effects are going to happen, and they're going to be the people who are most vulnerable are the people who are most vulnerable now. Working people, people of color, working class folks across Los Angeles. Those are the folks that are going to be affected the most. There's always going to be a multiplier in what happens. And so, as you can see, I'm a biker. I love to bike. This is not a prop. This is who I am as a person. I skateboard. I bike. I've been part of different, I have to change my behavior first in order to push people to change their behavior. But as part of the work in the union, we worked on the Hollywood community. Folks are familiar with that. Every 10 to 15 years, the city rezones the area. And so we were part of a coalition with Food and Water Watch, Act LA, different other environmental groups to make sure that we push for 100% electrification of buildings within Hollywood, to make sure that we build out a robust tree canopy, that when we build buildings, that they have bike infrastructure, and the employers offer free metro passes to the workers. Something we've done a lot also, by the way, when we negotiate contracts in the union. Unfortunately, many of the things we were pushing were in contrary to the council member, did not hear our concerns. But I think my way of doing things is building grassroots and collaboration, pushing people in power to do the right thing. Something I've done, and I will continue to do it in City Hall.
Thank you. Council member.
Thank you. So in addition to my work at water conservation in the city in this current drought, where we have reduced water usage by 9%, and mind you, that comes on the heels of Los Angeles being one of the most aggressive cities writ large at conserving water. And we've been doing that and leading the way since the early 1990s. We use less water than we did when we had over 1 million less population. However, it's not enough. So I've been leading the charge on that. And I'll be going up to Sacramento a week from now to talk to Gavin Newsom about his water plan. And that means water reclamation. That means stormwater capture. That means capture during rain events. We know, due to a recent study, that at best, the state of California will lose an additional 10% of its water by 2040. We have to conserve even more. And the leadership that I'm exhibiting as chair of this energy committee is pushing for a complete overhaul of the way we utilize water, which means recycled water. The water we drink from Lake Mead is recycled water from Las Vegas. So they're already doing the so-called toilet to tap. It just has a really bad connotation. So we know Lake Mead is down, all the reservoirs are down about 2/3. We're in real trouble. My leadership is going to be very important over the next 4 years and getting a handle on how we conserve and reuse water and work with the state and the federal government on water conservation efforts.
Thank you. Okay, thank you for that. We're going to move on to a couple questions about housing and its relationship to climate and environmental issues. So here's the first, and we will start with the council member on this one. UC Berkeley has studied the impact of local policymaking on reducing carbon emissions. Their modeling estimates that in all CD13 zip codes west of the LA River, building new infill housing is the most powerful local lever for reducing carbon emissions. What concrete steps would you take to build more housing in CD13?
Thank you. And how much time do we have on this one?
1 minute.
Okay, so I appreciate that. So let's talk about what I've already done. 4,300 units of supportive housing or covenant affordable housing since taking office in 2013. The way we grow as a city has everything to do with reducing our carbon footprint. I am a leader on the city council on this issue. Will continue to be a leader. I've focused on infill development, utilizing city parking lots for covenant affordable housing. For example, in Hollywood, we have the Hollywood Arts Collective, which is 150 units of covenant affordable housing with studio units going as low as $500 at the urban core within walking distance of one of the metro red lines. So this is what we do. This is what I know how to do. We have another one coming to Echo Park and more in the hopper. 44% of all housing in Hollywood is covenant affordable, and it's at the urban core.
Thank you, council member. Mr. Soto Martinez.
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, the first thing we have to do is remove the power
Turn
from
my camera off.
Sorry. The first thing we have to do is remove the power from council members on many of the housing decisions, right? That leads to corruption, leads to mismanagement, increase the cost of housing. So that's one thing we have to talk about. Second of all, I think we have to look at how we use higher density during around high transit corridors. Unfortunately, that has not happened to my liking. Just to give you an example, they currently broke ground on a 100% affordable housing on Santa Monica and Vermont. That has the normal parking minimums of the needing housing. That is absurd. Folks, we should have thought about that and say, how can we remove parking minimums from this parking structure? It would have been cheaper. We could have built more affordable housing with that money. And I think, which I alluded earlier, the electrification of buildings, Hollywood Community Plan is being redeveloped right now. We can push right now for 100% electrification of buildings. We don't have to wait to pass an ordinance. So that's something all we can do within our power.
Thank you. So our next question is about building decarbonization. So you'll have an opportunity to speak a little bit more about that. This year, the City Council took a first step toward building decarbonization by requesting city departments to report back with a plan for implementing an ordinance which would require new buildings in the city to be zero carbon. The motion came from the Energy, Climate Change, Environmental Justice and River Committee, led by Councilmember O'Farrell. Can you describe your commitment to this ordinance and what challenges do you anticipate in making it a reality in the city? Councilmember O'Farrell.
I'm sorry, I screwed that up just a second. Okay.
Thank you. There's a bit of a lag time to unmute. So thank you. Yes, I am behind this initiative and wholeheartedly in support. That's why I've introduced these initiatives, and they've gone through council unanimously. The next 4 years are going to be critical to setting the stage for the complete transition to clean energy. Our biggest challenge is building the capacity. Think about this. We need over 5 gigawatts of power, really almost 6. And 1 gigawatt of power would require about 3 million photovoltaic panels. We have to build the capacity. And I'm doing that by working with agencies and groups and Native American tribes like the Navajo Nation, where for the last 2 years, I've been working on a power purchase agreement for completely clean energy. We have the transmission lines, and it will create jobs and bring the clean energy that we need, and we need it now. I have a great sense of urgency about this. That's why I've approved over 12 initiatives since being the chair for the last year and a half.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Soto Martinez.
Yeah, absolutely. This is something that's being pushed by Councilmember Rahman. It was her motion. She's done the legwork on this, and so I'm 100% behind the work that she is doing. And so, yes, as I mentioned earlier, we were part of a grassroots organization that was pushing a council member to do electrification of buildings 3 years ago. Something that council members have a lot of power over the community plans when they get rezoned. So this commitment, frankly, could have been done a long time. It didn't have to go through an ordinance through the whole city. We have a lot of power over community plans. And so my commitment is the same one that I've done on the grassroots level, and to make sure that we have 100% electric. We don't have to wait for a citywide ordinance. We could do it within our own backyard, within our own jurisdiction. And I think the largest challenge is we can't forget the workers during this transition. There's a lot of union jobs. Workers will be affected through this transition. We got to make sure that they are not left behind, that in creating a new world that we want to see, that again, the most vulnerable working class Angelenos are affected by that.
Thank you. Councilmember O'Farrell.
Yeah, this definitely deserves a rebuttal. My office has done the work on this. And you know who does the most of the work? You all. It's the advocates and the activists and the climate change folks that we have in all of our neighborhoods that my office works with. So I definitely take exception to Nithya Raman has been leading this. I have no doubts about her leadership ability on climate issues, but this has been coming primarily through my office and my incredible staff, David Harone, Star Parsamian. And let me address the employee, the worker issue. DWP has about 9,400 employees in total. The transition to clean energy and all electric and 100% renewable energy is going to create about 9,500 jobs. And in the initiative, it includes labor. We're working very closely with all of labor, with our targeted local hire. I want to approach neighborhoods that have never had the opportunity. That'll be a direct approach, and that is baked into this ordinance. Very important. The details are important. Someone who doesn't know how things work or how to pull levers of government can't just come in here and make these kinds of claims. They are absurd.
Okay, thank you, Councilmember. I'll allow Ugo to make a response as well, and then we'll move on to the next question.
Yeah, I want to, it is absolutely Councilmember Rahman. She was her motion. She's the one working on it. But, look, 3-4 years ago, with part of a coalition, we were literally going to CD13, talking to voters, having them sign a petition to call the council member to say, we want 100% electrification in CD13, in the Hollywood Community Plan. Not once did the council member meet with that group, denied meetings, refused to meet with us, all of it ignored. So again, the power of the council doesn't have to be through an ordinance. They have a lot of discretion with the zoning within their district. So if you want to lead on it, you can lead on it now. You don't have to wait for an ordinance. And so as someone who's worked on the grassroots, it's been very frustrating to try to push these things. And I think that frustration is felt through a lot of people when you feel like the council is not listening to you. They're ignoring you. They're not listening to the grassroots. And so I also take issue with the framing of this, because the power to change this could have been done many years ago. Not now. And with the urgency of climate change, I think we have to act with that kind of urgency.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move on to transportation. And we'll start with Mr. Soto Martinez for this question. CD13 is densely populated and rich in services, making it well suited for traveling by bike. However, the district currently only has one bikeway of substantial length the LA River bike path that is comfortable for riders of all ages and skill levels. Meanwhile, opportunities to expand bicycle infrastructure on important thoroughfares in CD13 like Fletcher Drive and Temple Street were rejected in recent years. What is your plan to create a connected, low-stress bikeway network in the district?
Yeah, thank you for highlighting the projects that were gutted and not moved forward on Fletcher and Temple. So I appreciate you highlighting that. As I said, I'm a biker, right? So on day one, I will start working with LADOT to implement the mobility plan 2035 that was passed in 2015, right? This is an amazing plan to create a more multimodal city that improves bike infrastructure, walkability, creating moving away from centering the car of our streets. Unfortunately, only 3% of that plan has been implemented in the last 7 years. And so I will work with the folks already doing the work on the ground, have a ton of community input, but we have to have the vision. If we're going to change mitigate the climate crisis, we have to start moving folks away from the car. That includes pushing for fare-free transit, more bus lanes, more shelters so folks feel like they can use that for working classes. So we'll be absolutely aggressive in this because it is absolutely important that we do this.
Thank you. Council member.
Thank you. I'm glad you brought up that question. And I'm glad you mentioned the bike lanes at Elysian Valley because that was one of my projects. And also Fletcher Drive in Glassell Park, another one of my projects. And also very supportive of the Operation Healthy Streets motion that we are putting through council, adopting an ordinance that would address some of the concerns about how slow this has been implemented citywide. Let me also just say that on Hollywood Boulevard, over 2 miles of dedicated protected bike lanes are coming with the master plan that we're starting to build out next summer. And then we have dedicated bus lanes now on Alvarado, one coming to La Brea, and I'm working on multiple other dedicated bus lanes. I am a transit enthusiast. I'm a bicycle rider myself. That was my sole mode of transportation when I was a very young man for years. And so I'm huge on these efforts, and we absolutely do need the healthy streets across the city, and I'm going to support it. And I support Sunset for All, and I'm on record for that. And we're working very closely with the group. A lot of great change is coming because of the collaboration with the community, the transit community in my office.
Thank you. Council member, do you support the city council passing Healthy Streets as an ordinance with the same language that is in the ballot measure? And I'll ask the same question of Mr. Soto Martinez.
I am a believer that let's look at what the council is doing because it's really based with a heavy focus on communities that have been overlooked, the environmental justice communities, communities of color, and they don't have an adequate voice in the ballot initiative that has been created. So first things first, let's get the Operation Healthy Streets motion before council, and let's get that on record. And then we'll see if and when what happens to this ballot initiative. But something this comprehensive, Angelenos need to weigh in on. So I'm no opinion one way or another on the current ballot initiative, but all in for the Healthy Streets motion.
Mr. Soto Martinez.
Absolutely, I support it. And you know why? Because council already voted on this. They voted on the mobility plan 2035. Mitch O'Farrell voted for the mobility plan in 2015. The discussion, the studying, everything has been done already. The thing that hasn't been done is council members implementing it. That was the thing that was missing in that vote. It didn't have a thing to implement the thing they voted on. Typical city council, right? They vote on the great plan, but there's no implementation. This ordinance, the only thing it would do, it would mandate the thing that they already said they would be doing. That's it. It's literally making them do their job. And so yes, I would support it. I think it's a great thing. By the way, and the council district that signed on the most was CD13. And so the folks are saying in this district, we want this, we believe in it. Why are we delaying it? It should be voted on immediately.
Thank you. Okay, moving on to budgeting and LAPD. So many of the policies that we've been discussing tonight cost a lot of money, from retrofitting homes to building complete streets, to building new transmission lines. At the same time, in the 2022-23 budget, nearly half of discretionary funds will go to LAPD. Looking forward to next year, would you change how resources are allocated across departments and programs? Councilmember O'Farrell.
I've always said, put the funding where it's needed. I am not of the opinion that we need more police officers. We can be so much more efficient with the way that department is managed. But we also have to, we live in a real city where there's real crime and real rising crime. So we absolutely need to deter crime, while we also stand up new ways of addressing issues that don't require an armed response, like what I have going in Hollywood, the Circle program, which is an unarmed response to nonviolent calls for service. They've responded to well over 300 calls in the last several months. It's working. It's augmenting what the police would traditionally do. And I think once we put the Circle program in more parts of the city, we'll see even greater results. But we have to evaluate the data and where the need is every time we do a budget. And we have to do it methodically and follow the data. Thank you.
Mr. Soto Martinez.
Yeah, safety, it comes up as one of the top issues. And so, but, folks are frustrated. They call the police when something happens, and the police show up 2-3 hours later. Folks are having to hire private security to feel safe. Most of the calls that LAPD handles are nonviolent. Over 92% of the calls that LAPD handle are nonviolent. Most of them are having to do with homelessness or mental health or drug addiction. Unfortunately, LAPD, as you mentioned, is 45% of our discretionary funds. There are cities doing something better. Denver has used STAR program, which redirects a bunch of calls. And what they learned was that it was more cost efficient, faster response times. And when the person showed up, it was a mental health clinician and an EMT that knew how to direct person to services. I think the Circle program is a good start, but it has many shortcomings. These are not mental health clinicians. These are not EMTs. These are Urban Alchemy. It's a third-party organization that's brought in from San Francisco, not really accountable to the city. But we're heading in the right direction, but there has a lot of shortcomings, and we got to improve it.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move now. I think from our stakeholders, we received more questions about Echo Park Lake than any other issue. So we have to discuss that tonight. The first question, which comes from one of our stakeholders, will be addressed directly to Councilmember O'Farrell, and then Mr. Soto Martinez will be able to have a chance to speak to the larger issue as well. Okay, here's the question. Mr. O'Farrell, a lot of criticism has been directed at you in the wake of the clash in Echo Park back in March of last year. Can you tell us about the plan as you conceived it with the mayor's office and other agencies, and your feelings now in retrospect about how it unfolded? Also, what is your plan for the future of the park and the surrounding fence? I will give you 90 seconds for this question, Mr. Councilmember.
Thank you. So right now, we are engaging in a needs assessment involving any community member that wants to get involved on the future of the entire park complex. It's not just Echo Park Lake, it's the Bellevue Recreation Center, it's the tennis courts, it's the ball fields, it's the childcare center, all of it part of the same complex. And so what I want to hear from is the community on how the future of the entire complex will look in terms of activation, in terms of security, in terms of whatever ideas constituents have. So the fence that is up there now is definitely temporary. It was always going to be temporary, and that is not going to be a permanent fixture. In addressing what happened there, my mission was and always was to get everyone at Echo Park Lake living in horrific conditions there, under a roof and on a path to wellness. That's what we did. And I know there's been all sorts of controversy and claims, a lot of false claims, a lot of false narratives perpetuated. But the folks who interacted with actual people experiencing homelessness were practitioners that are expert in this field. The police came because of so many threats to come to Echo Park and fight and stop recreation in parks from fencing off the park after getting people in under a roof for the repairs that needed to be made. And there were $1.1 million of repairs. 4 people died. There was open air drug dealing. There was human trafficking. And that wasn't acceptable. I knew it had to come to a close. The police profile,
Thank you, Councilman.
a little heavy-handed, there's no question about it, but that's a choice that was made in terms of a public safety stance by the LAPD. And I can come back to this, but there's certainly more to this story. And we can talk more about it.
Thank you. Mr. Soto Martinez, what would you have done differently? What's your response?
Well, yeah, there's a lot to this story that's also being left out. The one thing that's being left out is that this encampment grew under the council member. You don't go in when you have 160 people living at the park. You try to address people's suffering and the lack of housing when it's 1 or 2 tents. That was one of the biggest mistakes. The second biggest mistake was the inability to bring people together through a very difficult, tense subject. I get it. It's sensitive for a lot of people. This was a failure. It was a failure to do that. And then when that failure happened, bring in hundreds of police officers, more journalists were arrested that night than any part in the entire United States. It was a militarized zone. I talked to residents, they were accosted by the police just by walking. They were a few blocks away from Echo Park Lake. It wasn't just heavy-handed, it was absolutely atrocious. This was after the same year that George Floyd was murdered. And when confronted about this, the council member called it a false flag operation and saying that this was concocted by activists, a UCLA report. And so I would have engaged that encampment early on. I would have brought in people from opposites. I know how to do that. I'm an organizer. We bring people together and to take accountability for your own actions. I have yet to hear the council member take responsibility for the encampment growing and what happened afterwards. And so I would have done a lot of things differently in this whole situation.
Thank you. Council member, I have a follow-up question for you on the police response, which you hinted you could speak to at more length, and which Mr. Soto Martinez also spoke about. So let me frame the question that way, and if that doesn't allow you room to respond to Mr. Soto Martinez, we can give you more time. But I'm guessing you may be able to do both at once. So here's the follow-up question. When we look at Echo Park Lake, there are obviously questions about the best way to get unhoused folks housed, but there are also questions about the use of force. Many community members have expressed concerns about the number of officers involved in the operation, the tactics and equipment used, which some describe as militaristic, the potential for escalation when these methods are used. And these concerns may be particularly acute for vulnerable populations that mistrust LAPD due to the department's history of misconduct or their own lived experience. How do you address those concerns moving forward? I think.
There we go. Can you please start that again? I couldn't unmute. It wouldn't let me.
Sure.
Let me clear another complete misconception. Let me repeat this. The police did not sweep homeless folks away. They were not involved in that. It was outreach practitioners that I brought there beginning in January when the population was very low. And the fact is, street watch practitioners brought in additional tents and invited folks to come into the park. That's just a fact. And I'm not going to pretend otherwise. It's just the way it happened. So by the time we're able to close the park, It had swelled to over 200 people, but we were determined to house everyone there, no matter how they got there or when they got there. And Hugo mentioned the UCLA report. It wasn't peer-reviewed. The researchers clearly had an agenda. It was unscientific in tone. It was editorialized. It opened with the city of Los Angeles staged a police invasion of Echo Park Lake, a public park in a gentrifying neighborhood. Now, let me tell you about some of the other efforts across the city. At Venice Beach, the police cleared encampments. That did not happen at Echo Park Lake. I did not call the police. My mission was to get everyone under a roof. We did that. And then nearly a year and a half later, crime has been reduced to zero. There has been no crime at Echo Park Lake. I will never apologize for making the park safer, more inviting. And by the way, it is a Prop O project for clean water restoration. So we're now back in compliance with that as well. Tons and tons of trash and biohazardous waste was dumped into the lake. It was one of the most dangerous places in the city, and we dealt with it.
I appreciate that response, but council member, I'm not sure it totally answers the question. I mean, you said that it was very heavy-handed. You know, if frankly, like I live in Council District 5, you know, if this happened in Pan Pacific Park, 100 officers in my neighborhood park, it would freak me out. Like, you know, this is a lot of people, you know, with riot gear and all of that kind of stuff. And a lot of people are naturally anxious about that kind of operation in their community. So you say you didn't call the cops, but what I'm asking is, do you approve of that kind of approach? And would you do something differently in the future? Because it's naturally of concern to folks, particularly Black and brown communities.
That approach was very unfortunate. But when you have 400 people responding to a call for action from the DSA, from Street Watch, and from some of these groups to come and fight at Echo Park Lake, and they're actually preventing my outreach workers from getting in there. They're preventing recreation in parks once we've gotten everyone who wants it under a roof and shuttled them there. I bought a building for this operation. We took people to the building. When you have 400 people show up determined to stop us from housing people and then enclosing it so we could start the repairs, that's a real problem. Do I like or approve of the actions that we all witnessed? No, but what we needed to do was get people out of a very dangerous situation who are being victimized at Echo Park Lake. And that's exactly what we did. And that's something that I'm going to stand by. And now the park for 14 months has been open, safe, accessible, secure. It is one of the crown jewels of the park system. And our parks are for everyone. They're not for lodging or living in a tent at the park. And I feel very strong about this operation because since then, as far as the operation that I engaged in, we've stood up hundreds of additional units through 2 tiny home villages that I built, through the city's first safe sleep site, with more housing solutions on the way. So we're making real progress.
Thank you,
and that shouldn't get lost in this conversation either.
Thank you, council member. Appreciate it. Mr. Soto Martinez, do you have a response before we move on?
Sure. I would say there's no need to be defensive, Mitch. I think what's required is for you to accept that this is the wrong direction for the city. I mean, what's also lost on this conversation is that the chief architect for using the police and criminalization through 4118 in the city is the council member, something he's pushed for over several years. And so to sit here and say that, you know, we should have done it differently is just complete lie. He's the one pushing for that on the council. And so if you want to stop what happens with the LAPD when they interact with people with mental health or drug addiction and homelessness, we all know what happens many, many times, is you remove police officers from those calls. Simple as that. Why are we sending the police department to deal with folks that have mental health, drug addiction, or experiencing homelessness? We can create alternative systems of policing that give people the safety. And when the folks show up there, they know how to connect that person to the services that they need. What happened at Echo Park Lake is an example of something that has been being pushed by the current councilman, including Councilmember Farrell, for many years. And so we have to stop doing that. It only moves people from one part of the block to the other. It doesn't solve homelessness. We have to start with housing solutions.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay, we're gonna move on.
I got to respond to that. I'm not the architect of 4118. I just talked about
You
the circle
support-
program. We are diverting calls.
You support for, but Mr. O'Farrell, you
No,
supported
let me
the,
finish, Scott. If I'm getting attacked, I'm going to weigh in. Everyone watching this needs to understand. So many accusations flew just then. I don't know where to start. And clearly you're reading from a script and this is pre-planned for you, and that's fine, but it's perpetuating another false narrative. And that's the whole problem here. And I'm not defensive. I'm very secure in what I do. There's a huge difference. So let's just, get this back on track and stop saying things like criminalizing homelessness. I don't criminalize homelessness. I house people, and I'll continue doing that. And we're being very successful at it. It's the issue of the day, and that's the imperative here.
Okay.
Why we're
Thank you.
litigating what happened
I have to
14
cut.
months
I have
ago
to cut it
is
off
beyond
there,
me.
council member. We have other issues to deal with tonight.
All right.
Limited time. Thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we're gonna move to a different topic. LA River. The NCSA, along with many other environmental organizations, has opposed LA County's LA River Master Plan, largely because of a lack of ambition when it comes to opportunities to add ecological value to the river, including removing concrete at certain locations. The city council has been relatively quiet on the plan. Do you think the county master plan gets it right? And what is your vision for the river? Lisa, do you remember who went first last?
I do not. I apologize. Oh,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, in the beginning of the question you did, it was Councilmember O'Farrell who started.
Okay, so let's start with Mr. Soto Martinez on this question.
Yeah, there's been a lot of criticisms about this plan. I think, as you mentioned too, right, one of the big things is that we have to depave the river. I think there's a lot of use of how we're going to make it more concrete. But I also have heard from a lot of stakeholders in the Elysian Valley and Atwater that a lot of these plans are centered more around tourism and bringing people into the area. They're not sensitive to issues around gentrification and how we're actually going to open up the park for Angelenos, right, to recreate and enjoy it. And so I think that when we think about the development and money that gets put by the county or the city, sometimes it's just to make it more of a tourist attraction, or how you make money off of this. I think we need to move away from that ethos and think about how we open up space for Angelenos, so folks can recreate, and also that the communities of color can have access to those amenities, which are very lacking. So I think there's a lot of shortcomings with the plan that's there right now. I would not be supportive of it as it's written right now.
Thank you. Councilmember.
I don't approve of the plan. I didn't from the first time I saw it. What I do approve of is the plan that the city did some years ago that I was part of. Why do I support that? It's because we did years and years of collaboration with the community in Elysian Valley, in Atwater Village, in Studio City, in Canoga Park, south, north, every direction of the river. That is a plan that is very organic and also calls for the removal of sections of the trapezoidal channel. But we have to take into account the hydrology of the LA River, which is really very complicated. But that plan addresses that through developing 9 different nodes, one of them being at Taylor Yard. I'm very interested and have been leading this node at Taylor Yard on how we can bring the river back. And we're doing all sorts of demonstration projects, including the acquisition of parcel G2, which my office led. And that is going to be an incredible future park. Right now it's passive. We have to deal with the contamination issue. But I was just at a open house on Saturday, working and visiting with my river friends from MRCA, the city, and the state. So this is in the committee that I chair, and the future of the river will absolutely involve the communities in detail, following the city plan and not the county master plan.
Thank you, Councilmember. How are we doing on time, Lisa? Do we need to move on?
How much time do you have? How many more questions would you like to ask?
There's maybe one more question.
I think that's fine.
Okay. All right, so this is a little bit of a different topic, campaign finance. What have you done to support campaign finance reform? And what do you think about the idea of democracy vouchers? We'll start with Councilmember O'Farrell.
I've always supported the campaign financing reform that's come before the city council, including a ban on developers who have active applications anywhere in the city. I think that's fine. Repeat what you said, democracy vouchers, did you say?
Yes, democracy vouchers is the idea of giving regular Angelenos a voucher that they could use to support candidates of their choice.
The devil would be in the details. That's pretty general, but let's take a look at that. I think the matching fund program is good. Candidates who believe in their mission, it's not a bad thing with restrictions for a candidate to go out and raise money and prove to people his or her worth in terms of someone that they would support. I would love it ideally if we could take all money and just do public financing of campaigns when candidates meet certain criteria. That's the very best way to do this. And I've always been supportive of that.
Mr. Soto Martinez.
You know, this is I laugh because it's been so hard to raise money as a grassroots candidate. As a candidate, I have refused to take fossil fuel money, unlike the incumbent, who's got my fossil fuel money. We have not taken corporation money, real estate money, or anybody that wants to profit off of the city. We're not taking their money, because when we say no to that money, we're saying yes to workers, to immigrants, to small business owners, the folks that should have a voice. And so we don't have to, as a candidate, you don't have to wait for reform. You can live those values. And so we are living those values. We're trying to act from a grassroots level. Unlike Mitch, who over 50% of his money comes from the real estate industry, over half of his money isn't even from the city of Los Angeles. We're trying to uplift the people we're trying to represent. And so and to answer your question about democracy vouchers, I have read about them, I researched them. I think it's a great idea. I think Seattle is the one doing it or pushing for it, or one of the northwest cities. The little I've read, I like it because it takes away this just unfair advantage of the very wealthy, the very elite, buying their power as they've done for many, many years here in the city of Los Angeles.
Council member.
Yeah, if anyone from the petroleum industry sent me a check to contribute to my campaign, I can tell you we would have returned it. And if that happened, a check was returned. We returned so many contributions from organizations, agencies, or corporations that I do not support. So it's absolutely another untruth that I'm accepting money from petroleum interests. Quite the contrary. I'm working on ending all petroleum, all oil drilling, all capping all the wells. I am not a petroleum candidate, but that's what challengers sometimes do.
Let me, instead of getting into a back and forth here, let me ask some specific campaign finance ideas and see if you guys are on board. Probably a brief yes or no would be sufficient on these. Do you support a ban on non-individual donations? So the idea that only people, human beings, not corporations, not unions, not PACs, just people donating to campaigns. Would you support that? Mr. Soto Martinez.
I don't think unions are like corporations, but I would, to be consistent, I would say yes.
Mr. O'Farrell.
I would definitely consider it. It's not as clean as that. The more there's a balance we have to strike, because the more we enact rules, the more it drives it undercover with other sources, independent expenditures. And independent expenditures can get really huge. They can be millions and millions of dollars. So we have to really be careful, because we want to be as transparent as possible. Not a fan of IEs. And I know there have been IEs in support of me, and certainly IEs opposed to me. It would be great if we could be completely transparent with where all the money comes from. We should have a conversation instead of either or. how could we be completely transparent and really encourage honesty, transparency, and sincerity in the way we fund campaigns? That would be the
Councilmember, would you support lowering the maximum donation for an individual or an organization? I can tell you as a grassroots candidate, it's not easy for grassroots candidates to get $800 donations. Is that something that you would support?
It's not easy for anyone to get an $800 donation.
Yeah.
You know, let's take a look at the entire universe. It would have to be consistent. I was an unknown candidate back in 2013. It was tough, but I made my point and I had some good donations from constituents.
Mr. Soto Martinez, what about you? Would you support lowering the maximum donation level?
Oh my God, absolutely. Our average donation was $60. The council members' average donation was over $500. So yes, I think doing that would give normal working people, folks that are not connected to power and money and real estate industry, the ability to actually run for office. One of the things that's been the most frustrating is in me thinking about this, I'm a union organizer. I know that this system will never, as it's right now, will never allow for a housekeeper, a single mom, a teacher, a person who interacts with the city in a very different level than developers to run for office. And having to struggle and fundraise through my many networks has revealed how incredibly corrupt our campaign finance system is. And so, yes, we need to lower it. Absolutely.
Okay, I'll ask one more and then we're going to go to closing statements. How about increasing, making the matching funds program even more generous than it is already? Is that something that you would support, Mr. Soto Martinez?
Again, absolutely, but because it was a good change, and I think it's not bad. It's not bad, but if it helps more people like housekeepers, cooks, dishwashers, single moms run, then yes, we should increase it. Mr.
O'Farrell?
I wouldn't change it. I mean, it's 6-1. It was 4-1 in previous election cycles. I think that's pretty good, especially if you're going to lower the maximum you can give. You know, I don't know. Again, you have to have a balanced conversation about this. I want to have the most honest, transparent, sincere approach to funding a candidate. Right now, that is not the case, and I acknowledge that. So I would love to be part of a conversation about how we could make campaign financing more fair, equitable, and transparent. We need to have that conversation.
Thank you. Okay, we're going to move to closing statements. These will be 1 minute per candidate, and we will start with Mr. Soto Martinez.
Thank you so much, Scott, for moderating this, and to everyone here. It's a very spicy conversation, but I like it. You know, I would say that there's a reason why nearly 70% of the district did not vote for the incumbent. There's a reason for that, because when you look at these, and you've seen it reflect in his answers, it's coming, we're working on it. It's a balanced approach. The devil is in the details, hemming and hawing, not picking a side. I'm sorry, but when we're dealing with the climate crisis, there is no middle ground. When we're dealing with housing the most vulnerable people in Los Angeles, there is no middle ground. We have to use housing solutions. When we talk about building infrastructure, like bike infrastructure or buses, there is no middle ground. And so I think what I represent is a voice of someone who's been in the grassroots, trying to build coalitions and working in collaboration with normal people just like you, so that City Hall can work for us. The only difference is now that I think we've built enough of a community where we're not going to be pushing folks, we're going to be electing them to do the work. And so that's what I want to do for City 13.
Thank you, Mr. Soto Martinez. Councilmember O'Farrell.
You just heard Mr. Soto Martinez just give more talk and words, and he's never, ever actually taken action like I have. We approved the LA 100 plan. It's a transition to clean energy. We are well on our way for that. It replaces natural gas electricity generation with wind, solar, and battery storage, while improving energy efficiency in our transmission lines. We approved that on a 12-0 vote with my leadership. We are on our way already. The council also approved an equitable hiring plan, which instructs the city of Los Angeles DWP to increase hiring from environmentally and economically disadvantaged neighborhoods and focus on ensuring project labor agreements, prevailing wage, and targeted hire requirements for clean energy. 9,500 jobs. That language is mine. That came from me. We're doing it. The goal puts LADWP, the nation's largest utility, on
Thank you.
track for an aggressive transition that would present a model for the
Thank you,
nation.
Councilmember.
And we are doing that right now. I am a man of
Thank you,
action.
Councilmember.
We have
That's
results.
time.
My opponent has no results of any kind.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Okay. Well, I enjoyed this conversation very much. I thank you both for taking the time, for engaging in a back and forth. We wanted to see if we could get a little deeper on some of these issues than some of the other forums. I hope you enjoyed it. I know our stakeholders, I very much hope our stakeholders found it engaging. Yeah, this is a very consequential election, folks. So please get involved and get your friends and neighbors and colleagues involved as well. The higher the turnout, the more accountable either of these folks will be once he is elected. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. I want to thank both of you so much. I think that, and I want to thank Scott. Thank you. I think it was a really powerful conversation. I imagine all of us learned a lot. So I want to thank you for your time, and I want to thank both of you for your commitment to this city. I just really, really appreciate that. So thank you.
Thanks, Lisa.
All right, now for folks who want to stay with us, we have more things to discuss. And the next thing we're going to discuss, sorry, my screen looks very strange, is the draft wildlife ordinance. Let me get my screen looking normal again if I can. Okay. Allie, are you here? Oh, you are. Thank you for waving. Thank you. I'm going to ask if you can unmute and then I'll say a couple words. So for those of you, everybody is welcome to stay. I know a lot of folks were here just to listen to the forum, but we're now going to discuss the wildlife ordinance, and our representatives are going to have an opportunity, I hope, to vote on that. And then we will hope to discuss the LA Zoo's new proposal a bit, and also the new language on the oil drilling ban before we move on to reports from committees and ask for announcements and wrap up. So first, to talk about the draft wildlife ordinance. This is something that the NCSA has been involved with for years, and it's been going on for years, and Allie can tell us more about that. Allie, I should mention, she is the Director of Communications for Councilmember Paul Koretz, and she's also a co-founder of CLAW, the Citizens for LA Wildlife. So she knows a lot about this effort because this effort has moved, it was initiated by Koretz's office. We've been supportive all along the way, and now it's our opportunity to weigh in on the draft ordinance. We had a deep discussion in June. You can go and check out the recording online if you want. We decided not to take a vote then and to take a step back and learn a little bit more. Our advocacy committee did visit the issue a week or so ago and is in support. And we've since our June meeting, two other things happened. One, we got a really very thorough letter from the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council that went through point by point of the ordinance and made lots of recommendations. And you can access that on our website or on their website. And also there was a very, I don't know what to call it, dramatic public hearing that lasted many hours, where a lot of property owners that would be directly affected by the ordinance weighed in. So I think I've said the things I wanted to highlight. What I would like to do is invite Allie to give a little bit of background because she knows so much more than I do. And she's here really to answer any questions or respond to any comments that that you folks have tonight. But I'm hoping this is going to be a relatively short conversation because we've talked about this a lot, and I'm hoping we can move to a vote pretty quickly because we do have more to discuss tonight. Okay, that's enough on me. I will hand the floor over to Ally.
Well, hello, can everyone hear me okay?
Yes.
Great. So it's so good to be here. Thank you, Lisa, for having me. This has been an absolute love project for me to get to do with the council member. You know, the city of LA, a lot of people see from far away as a network of freeways, but we understand that we have a very significant mountain range running through the center of our city. Not only is California a biodiversity hotspot, but and I see I'm calling out Mas Dojiri here, who runs the biodiversity expert panel. You know, they've done some really tremendous reports that have shown that this specific area, they've divided the city into biodiversity ecotopes, and that this specific area has certain flora and fauna that exists nowhere else. And you know, everybody knows our famous P22 who lives in Griffith Park. This area, just for anybody who is not exactly familiar, the initial pilot area has been considered really the most sensitive right now. It's between the 101 to the east, the 405 to the west, Sunset to the south, roughly Ventura to the north, and it is home to mountain lions, uncollared mountain lions, bobcats, gray fox, the list goes, turkey vultures, it goes on. And really the purpose of this is to really keep those connection spots open so that the wildlife can continue to move through this area, continue to get food, continue to mate healthily. But we also know that as engineering has improved, building in this area has gone up. A lot of those connection spots have either bottlenecked or in fact been severed. Up in Liberty Canyon, there was recently a lot of information about this wonderful new bridge that's going to go over, and we're very supportive. I happened to get to be there on the day that we broke ground, and it was wonderful. But I'll tell you, this purpose of this is to make sure that our connectivity stays open. So that up there is like a stint in the heart after the heart attack. What we're trying to do is keep that connectivity for our wildlife moving. Since this has come up, you know, the fire department has looked at it very closely, and the planning department looked at, you know, how do we not only keep the best practices open, we know that when our wildlife are protected, their habitats are protected. And when their habitats are protected, our trees, our water, cleans our air, we have cleaner water, it affects the entire city. In a park poor city, it's a great time to be doing this. And we're almost out of time. We're in the 6th mass extinction. We're at a point with climate change where we know that 97%, and Mas has given this note to reminded me of this, and I love it, which is, I mean, I love it in pain, which is 97% of our biomass is human and domestic animals. We've got 3% left of our wildlife. And if that doesn't scare you, I don't know what can. By keeping their habitats healthy, we actually can fight climate change. We can actually help ourselves. And the reason I brought up the fire department is that they looked at it and they said, you know, not only will this help us mitigate fire by having better buffer zones, but it'll actually give us better defensibility. So in this, it includes, you know, considerations to the way we treat our trees, consideration for native plants, consideration for the way fencing works, and perhaps making sure that we are not cutting off those spaces even when our homes aren't really big. I do want to address a couple of things that have come up. There have been a very serious movement of some developers and homeowners who have taken some of this information, and a lot of people have become afraid. So let me just say things right away. This is for new building only. This is nobody who has a house in this area will have to rip anything out. Nobody will have to reduce anything. If you're building larger than a certain size, then the places where you're making those adjustments will have to adjust to those new building codes. But that exists now, whether or not this passes. If you have a house in this area and you either knock it down more than 70% or you want to have an addition, then though right now you'd have to apply the BHO and sorry, the HDR, the hillside construction regulation. You know, as we evolve and we learn and we grow in the way we build, like we can't put asbestos back in our walls. We can't put our lead pipes in. We have to evolve with that. And the goal of this is to try to be more responsible for our environment as we build in our hillsides. So the other thing is that the planning department has extended the public comment period to August 22nd, which is coming up. So I would encourage any of you who have been thinking about it personally to send letters directly to our LA2040@lacity.org, and we can put that in the chat. And you know, I think I've kind of addressed everything, but I'm also want to say we've received a lot of questions from people who are not in the area. This is a citywide effort. As soon as we've heard from Northeast, say Poppy Peak, Brentwood, all around the city, places where there are hillsides, Elephant Hills, et cetera, Mount Washington. When are we getting this? The answer is we have to get this pilot done. And then it will expand. The council member also put in a new motion to connect all of the hillsides. You know, Ventura County has done a great job doing a wildlife ordinance. We want to connect our Santa Monica's to the Santa Susanas, to the San Gabriels, et cetera, et cetera. So there is a plan to move beyond this area, but this is a really critical place where building has happened very quickly over the past decade. And so we want to make sure we don't sever any of those connectivities as they happen now. So that was a lot. I hope I didn't take up too much time.
No,
but I'm
that was
here to
great.
answer
That
questions.
was perfect. Thank you. And I don't know if you just said this, sorry, I'm wearing too many hats, but the effort you were talking about regarding expanding this to the whole city was, the first step of that was passed by City Council since our June meeting as well. That's the region-wide wildlife habitat connectivity plan.
Yes.
So we are actually taking steps toward that. Okay, so are there any questions, comments on this before we move to a vote? We don't need any. That's totally fine if we don't have any. Connie, go ahead. And then we'll try to wrap it up. If it looks like people, we have talked about this a fair amount, so I imagine everybody's ready. And I'll grab the language that we agreed on in the advocacy committee and try to put it in the chat. Go ahead, Connie. I think you should be able to unmute yourself now. If you can't, let me know.
Thank you. I like the statement that Alison did, that about regulating the developer, making the developers responsible, especially if they want to build in the hillside areas. Because in Echo Park, the hills are being destroyed, the trees are being removed to build mega buildings with very, very low affordable units, and the rest are condos. So there is controversy here going on, and I'm glad that this ordinance limits development to contribute to our biodiversity, because nature needs to be upheld and looked after. Because we here in Echo Park Hills, we lost our birds. No birds at all. So thank you, Alison.
All right, thank you. I think we might be ready to move to a vote. I'm also going to try to grab the link to the evaluation, which I was not able to add earlier. Muriel, are you able to go through and do the roll call?
Oh,
Yeah.
Lisa, could you please read the motion one more time?
Could you read it, Dan? I am trying to get the eval link. I just put it in the chat. And it's not a motion. Well, I mean, I guess it should be, but we're supporting the draft wildlife ordinance.
Oh, okay, that's good enough.
Okay, I'll just start. Lisa?
Oh my gosh, I'm not ready for you to start. Okay, but I'll get ready. Yes.
Okay. Okay, I vote yes. Scott Epstein?
Yes.
Yes. Okay, Lionel Maris?
Yes.
Yes. Furkan Yalcin? Furkan? Okay, I'll go. John M. Hales?
He
That should be a
added
no
to me
vote.
that I think, John, you're not able to vote. Is that correct?
That is correct. I was notified yesterday.
Oh, okay. Cindy Huback?
Yes.
Okay. Ji-young Park?
Yes.
Yes, awesome. Christine Louise Mills?
Yes.
Thank you. Melanie Winter?
Yes.
Laura Gonzalez?
Yes.
Awesome. Pat Bates?
Yes.
Shelley Billick? Shelley?
Yes.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Wait, aren't
Terry-
Pat and Shelley from the same neighborhood council?
Say again?
I think Pat and Shelley from the same neighborhood council, so they cannot vote. Am I wrong? Anyway, they both voted yes, but we can't count both of them. That's fine.
So Pat and Shelley are in the same one. Oh,
Yes.
goodness.
we're not. You're
Okay.
not?
Hey, Lisa,
Shelley-
this is Natalie. Am I not a voting member?
No, I'm not talking about you. I'm talking about Pat and Shelley.
I know I just hopped off and hopped back on, but I had
Natalie, hold on. We're just trying to resolve the Pat and Shelley question.
So Pat is the alternate for Heather Michaels. I'm not sure Shelley might be because of her affiliation with NCSA.
No, okay, so that's fine. We'll just count that as one vote. Go ahead, Muriel.
Okay. Sorry, it was Natalie Friedberg in the voting list.
She's back and she's the one who's asking.
No, I was. I'm
it
like,
said
I don't think
non-voting
she's
next to
not
my.
She's not a representative though. Laura's the representative for
Okay.
Eagle Rock.
Oh, okay, thank you. So Natalie isn't a voter.
Correct.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Terry Saucier.
Yes.
Okay. Kathy Schaefer.
Yes.
Okay, Dan Kegel.
Lisa will laugh, but abstain.
I'm
Fair
just
enough.
swearing with frustration, but we can move on.
Okay, Natasha Gascon. Okay, Ravi.
Yes.
Thank you. Alison Simard.
She's not a voter. She's not a voter.
Oh, okay, sorry. Faith Mira.
Yes.
Yes, and then Karina De La Cuesta.
Actually, Kathy Schreiner, I was able to come, so I'm the Van Nuys person.
Go ahead,
Oh,
Kathy.
Kathy.
That's fine. I know she's good.
Okay, and abstain.
Okay.
Abstain. Okay. Carino. So I guess Carino De La Cuesta didn't.
He's an alternate for Van Nuys.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Okay.
Okay, great. Thank you, guys. That's, do you want to count the votes? I mean, it's definitely passed.
The Glenn Bailey, my name was not called.
Oops.
I thought it was for Pat. Okay. Glenn Bailey.
He's on the Northridge East Neighborhood Council.
I'm on both, but I'm the voting rep for Northridge East. Yes.
Oh, okay. Yes. Okay. So hold on. Let me run this again. 17. So out of 17, it's about 15 yeses and 2 abstentions.
Yay.
Okay, great. Thank you, folks.
Overwhelmingly.
So, yeah, that's wonderful. So let me just say a couple of things. One is, there's a really thorough letter, as I mentioned, that the Bel Air Beverly Crest Neighborhood Council wrote. We decided it wasn't like our place to get in, or our capacity to get into the weeds and address every one of those items. But, I suggest you guys look at it as a helpful way to think about the motion. And it really is to some extent still in pilot form. So that's why our wording is like, we're super supportive of this. It's probably not perfect, but I mean, maybe it's perfect. I actually don't know. But there are opportunities to tweak it, we hope, before it is expanded to the rest of the city. And thank you in particular to Charles Miller, who suggested that language for the advocacy committee, and everybody embraced it immediately. The other thing is, as Ali said, the comment period is closing really fast. So if you have not weighed in on this as a neighborhood council, you can still weigh in. You can still submit a CIS in the council file. And I think it's just good to have that on record, expressing support. But please do, at the very least, get some, I mean, there was a lot of pushback, I guess I would say, from property owners. And some of it, frankly, I mean, some of it might be legitimate. Some of it, to me, was very disheartening, to be candid. I know, Shelley, you might want to speak to this, because I remember you were a speaker that night. I think you had a similar reaction to mine. But we really, there were a lot of comments. So I really would encourage you to submit your individual comments, because I think that will actually make a difference. Does Shelley or anybody else who was there that night want to weigh in? Okay.
I can say, this is Ally, I can say that there has been a robust push from the development world to, to frighten a lot of homeowners. And we are open for all kinds of, support and all kinds of, it isn't perfect. It is a pilot. We really did want to hear from people, but there is a lot of scripted misinformation. And so I also recommend that if you do hear some of that, that the the planning department's website also has a few fact sheets that really do try to set the record straight. Some of them I address, but yes, please, individually and your organizations, please have them, please put some of those comments in, because it helps to balance. Some of that was really scripted, as you heard over and over. And I'm so glad Mas Dojiri is here as well, because he adds a lot of the scientific credibility to this. The city has been really meeting with departments to make this as good as possible.
Mas, would you like, go ahead, please share your wisdom with us. We would love that.
If I could jump in,
Yes.
I just want to make a few comments. I did attend the public hearing on the wildlife ordinance on July 13th. It started at 6 o'clock and it actually ended at 9:45. I jumped off at 8 because the comments ended up sounding very similar. And I categorize them into two major points, or two major issues that the residents were bringing up. Certainly there were residents and people on the call that were very supportive of biodiversity and building the urban environment and the suburban environment with nature in mind. So there was a lot of support on it. But the two major comments that were kind of that were brought up was one was, what's the science behind this? We don't realize or we don't understand if there's a scientific basis for all these requirements in wildlife ordinance. So let me address that in a minute. The second one was real estate value. And I will also address that one because we just recently got some information on that. The science part of it, what we did at LA Sanitation and Environment, our department within the Public Works, what we did was we actually emailed the Department of City Planning because we know Kat Superfisky and Connie Polini-Tipton, who worked on this draft. And we asked them to cite all the scientific literature that they had gone through in order to develop this draft. And so they went ahead and did that. They thought that was a great idea to address that question. And it's like 2 pages long of citations, the bibliography. So there's a lot of science behind it. The second part of the scientific basis question is we have a biodiversity expert council, and it consists of scientists from local universities, UCLA, USC, Loyola Marymount, Occidental College, Cal State LA, Cal State Northridge. And so we have over 60 people in this biodiversity expert council. So there are people from LA County Museum of Natural History. There are people from the Nature Conservancy, the Center for Biological Diversity, LA County Department of Public Works, you name it, they're on it. They're ecologists, taxonomists, et cetera, et cetera. So we have asked them to help us draft a letter in support. Now, these are mostly scientists in support of this wildlife ordinance. So that kind of handles the science portion of it. As far as the real estate, the value of the real estate, I can give you 2 personal kind of reasons for, as far as my personal experience on the value of nature. And we have some other public health correlations with native plants and trees, et cetera, and the health of children. So I went to UC Santa Barbara and got my bachelor's degree there. And currently I live in Lunada Bay in Palos Verdes Estates. Both those areas are very expensive. I'm not bragging here. They are very expensive. And the reason that they're so expensive is Santa Barbara, when I was going to college there, and this was like 40 years ago or close to 50. Now I'm dating myself, but they implemented a zero growth initiative. Because there was zero growth and a lot of open space in Santa Barbara, et cetera, it became a place where everybody wanted to live and buy a house. And because of that, because there's such a finite number of houses there, the property values went sky high. So it's limited because of so much open space and plants. Palos Verdes Estates and Rancho Palos Verdes, same thing. You go up there, it's so much trees, so many trees. The Palos Verdes Peninsula Land Conservancy bought hundreds of acres of land and made hiking trails. It could never be developed. And because of the finite number of houses there, of course, all the houses are going sky high. They're increasing value. We actually asked realtors and in a group called Biophilic Cities. It's almost like a biodiversity Facebook, where international cities share their experiences and their processes and their products on biodiversity. And so we asked the head, the executive officer there, Timothy Beatley, who is at the University of Virginia, about value of properties when there's so much nature around. And there is a 15% increase in property values when there's more trees. I just recently got a scientific article that correlates childhood asthma and what they call lymphoblastic leukemia. It's leukemia of the white blood cells. And when there's more trees, huge trees, canopies, et cetera, there's less incidence of both of those, particularly in children, because they end up developing their immune system because of the harmless bacteria that are found on all the vegetation. So there is kind of a cause and effect there, but the correlation statistically is really high. So public health wise, we need to protect our forests and tree canopies. And you also know, of course, that carbon sequestration, combating climate change, combating the heat island effect, the infiltration of stormwater, all that is associated with trees. So, so we do have a lot of backing scientifically. So I'm sorry I was long-winded, but I wanted to kind of give you the full picture. So I'm going to shut up now.
No, I appreciate that. That was really helpful. And we do want to move on, but Deborah, if that's your name, I want to address what you said. I see a pattern, more development in poorer areas, conservation in wealthier areas. That's why that was a big point of discussion in June, and that's why I wanted to share that there is a plan to expand this to many other parts of the city, and many of those parts of the city are rural but not high income. So we are aware of the tensions regarding equity. And it's just sort of odd to me, having been in the meeting that Mas is referring to, that there were property owners expressing concern about their property values, because yes, this is probably going to help them, which is not the intent of the motion. But it probably will improve their property values, although many of them are really opposing it. So complicated.
I'm sorry. And as soon as this goes in, it immediately planning begins working on all those other hillsides areas like the say Poppy Peak area and the northeast trees area, and et cetera, et cetera. So it is wonderful to know that you guys are supporting it with the same vision that we are. This is not, an anti-mansionization motion. This is really about our city's health in a park poor city, and starting with the most sensitive area where we have mountain lions right now roaming. And those are keystone for the rest of our biodiversity. And the second that happens, planning begins moving immediately all the way around the rim of the valley in the city.
Thank you, Allie. And thank you, Mas. Okay, we're going to move on because we still have 2 things plus to talk about. I would like to talk about the LA Zoo super briefly. We are still learning about this. I really appreciate the mayor's office because they actually reached out to me and said, hey, did you know there's a new proposal? We voted at some point last year, I think, to support one of the zoo's alternatives, but not to, so they want to expand. The zoo wants to expand. And apparently there are some very legitimate reasons to do that. I'm always, and one of them, they want to be like a world-class zoo. And I'm like, well, do we need a world-class zoo? I'm not sure that LA needs a world-class zoo, but there are some compelling arguments connected to conservation, apparently, for expanding. As we know, as probably most of us know, the ideas of zoos have changed a lot, and the idea of how we, I was going to say house. I don't know if that's the right word because I'm totally not an expert at this, but in the way we house animals has changed, like what's appropriate, what's not appropriate. So one of the things they want to do is expand the space for animals so that they can do more of what they would do if they were not in captivity. So that sounds good. But some of their approaches have seemed a little bit much to a lot of the community. So they came back. We had supported alternative 1 and opposed alternative 2 and opposed the primary proposal. So they have a proposal called alternative 1.5. I put a link to our website webpage, which will link you to all of their information. Also, and then we have a lot to learn on this. So Friends of Griffith Park did a very, very, very comprehensive review, and they have an opinion that I want us to consider. We just got that within the past week. There's a really, really tight turnaround here. The deadline for comments is August 29th. So it's a 45-day comment period total. So that really prohibits most neighborhood councils from being able to weigh in, which is, of course, is problematic. There is a meeting tomorrow night. And you can find that information if you go to our webpage. I think it's at 6 o'clock. It's kind of buried on their webpage. It almost makes me feel like they don't want us to know about it. But I think we should go and learn more. And then the advocacy committee has agreed that we're going to have a special meeting. I haven't scheduled it yet because I want us to hear what's said tomorrow night first. But if you're interested in attending that meeting, email me and we'll put you on the list when we schedule it. But it'll probably be a Sunday night at 6 o'clock because that's when we usually meet. And it has to be before the 29th. Just so you know, just put my email in there. And we'll vote by email, I think. I think we've done that once before recently, but we'll have a vote by email so that we can get something submitted by the 29th. So welcome. We have a couple of minutes if you want to share your thoughts on it, questions, concerns, but we still have a lot to learn about it. The one thing that bothers me, just so you know, is that a lot of the communications on the zoo's webpage are comparing 1.5 to the primary proposal. They're not comparing it to alternative 1, which most of the public supported. So it's not a comparison that is really helpful for us, and it does make our work harder. Okay, that was a lot of talk, and somebody submitted something, I don't even know who, but thank you, I think. And any comments, questions about this before we move on? I think that's a no.
All right, I got a quick one.
Oh, go ahead, Melanie.
On the webpage regarding the meeting tomorrow at 6, it says scroll down to the bottom, and I'm scrolling and I'm scrolling. If you have a link, oh, sorry, you just put it. Thank you, Lionel. You just commented and thank you. Never mind.
Okay, I don't think there was a direct link. That's the problem. But if there is one now, maybe they've actually made an improvement since I was looking a few days ago. There was no direct link to it.
So that link that was just put in the chat is not the direct link?
I don't know, but this is what I'm saying. It kind of makes you feel like they don't want you to go because there's no direct link that I found. And I asked the mayor's office, I'm like, am I missing something? And they're like, no, you're not missing anything. So it's a problem.
The message in chat I posted includes the link for the meeting.
Okay, thank you.
The one that ends in zoo.
It just takes me to the page that has 50,000 things on it and a bunch of different links, and I don't see where the meeting link is.
So it's there. We should move on. Melanie, you can reach out to
Thanks.
me if you're not able to find it, but it is there, but it is hard to find, and that is bad.
Okay.
So that's the situation we have. And maybe we should say that tomorrow night. Glenn, you wanted to say something else?
No.
Okay. So Jamie Wong, are you with us? I don't know. But I would love, if you're here, if you could talk about the oil drilling ban for a moment.
Yeah, that would be great.
Thank you.
Sorry, I have my camera off. I'm actually eating dinner, so trust me, I'm doing you all a favor by going camera off. Quick introduction, and I'll keep it rolling because I know we're running late. My name is Jamie Huang. I'm here from the Department of City Planning. I'm with our external affairs team, and I'm a community liaison. Tonight, I'm here to give you guys a brief update on a rapidly approaching oil drilling ban ordinance that our department has currently drafted, and we're seeking public feedback on. We had a very robust conversation at Plan Check NC yesterday morning. That meeting is recorded and includes our PowerPoint presentation that our policy team did. So I'm going to go ahead and send that information as well as a copy of that PowerPoint presentation to Lisa here at the Sustainability Alliance so she can help disseminate the information later in the work week once we have a digital copy of that recording and PowerPoint presentation as well. But in a nutshell, and I'm going to keep it really brief verbally, and I'm going to go ahead and drop resources in the chat so we can keep the meeting going. Essentially, we're rolling out a public hearing opportunity on August 30th for a citywide ban on drilling oil. And this includes existing sites and shutting down current drilling sites. Sorry, I said the same thing. Existing active sites as well as inactive sites. So this is citywide for residential zone, commercial zone. It's just straight up all the several thousands of oil wells that are located in city boundaries. So this ordinance lays out how that would happen, how it would roll out. The missing piece as of today, right now, that we hope we'll have more details on as we continue to move forward with this and ideally finalize an ordinance sometime in the fall. Yes, that's right, fall of this year. So that's how quickly we're going with all of this. We are currently waiting on the Office of Petroleum Administration to finalize a reserve study that would tell us how long the amortization study or how long the amortization phase needs to be to phase out these oil wells. But basically in this draft ordinance, we have language in there that indicates 20-year rollout of phasing out existing uses. So I'm going to stop talking now, and I'm just going to let the fact sheet, the press release we have available, and our website resources speak for themselves. Please be advised the website is available in English and Spanish. There's a little button at the top in orange that says Espanol if you need a translated version of the information I'm about to drop as well. And I'm going to share my email address lastly. So if I didn't cover anything in these last like 45 seconds, please go ahead and just shoot me an email, or there's also an email to contact the oil policy team directly in the website link I'm about to send. But to wrap it up, if you haven't been listening to anything I just said, there's going to be a public hearing opportunity to provide feedback and learn more and answer your questions about the proposed oil drilling ban ordinance. August 30th, it's going to be a Zoom meeting. The details are going to be in the website link I'm about to drop. So please do come participate, learn about it, and we'll answer questions in the beginning. And then I think about 45 minutes to an hour in, that's when we're going to start the public comment period where we're going to record everyone's public comment. So that's it from me. I'm going to mute myself now and I'll start dropping those links that I keep promising you. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Jamie. That was great. And it was I do think it was a super robust conversation yesterday. And Dan, our Energy Committee Chair, go for it.
Hi, I looked at the ordinance. It looks pretty good. I mean, it's sending a definite message. No, there's a lot of no in it. No, no, no. The one thing I had a small question about is this does not cover underground gas storage, right? It's production, oil and gas production, but not storage, right?
Thank you for your question. I don't believe, I need to go back and look at the language again to verify this, but I believe you are correct. But this is a draft ordinance, and these are the type of comments we're trying to collect. And these type of comments and feedback will definitely shape the final version of the ordinance. So thank you for that. I believe this topic was also discussed yesterday. So we have it on my notepad. I know the policy team wrote down comments as well. So this is a great example of the type of feedback that we're looking for. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and for those of you who don't know, this was one of the first two, if not the first issue that the NCSA worked on when we got started in 2015. We are supporters of the Stand LA Coalition, and they have been working on this since at least then and since maybe before then. I did reach out to our colleagues at Physicians for Social Responsibility, and I asked them what they thought, and I have not heard back from them. I know there is a concern about the 20 years. And our energy committee meeting, I think we're meeting this Tuesday. Is that right, Dan?
I think that's correct.
We think that's true. So if you want to be involved in a conversation and weighing in on that, join us on Tuesday. Okay, any other thoughts on this before I think we're ready to move on to programming and committee reports, if that works for folks? Looks like we're good. Okay, I will pull up those slides if I can. They are not, okay, just a second, I have to do something. Oh, I hate it when this happens. Bear with me. Okay, now I think I should be able to share them. Okay, so briefly about Cool Blocks, we have a couple fun things happening. We worked very hard to secure two Climate Action Corps fellows, which I mentioned in our meeting last month. They're going to be joining us in September. They'll be with us working more or less full time. It's kind of like the Peace Corps. It's under the aegis of AmeriCorps. But they'll be working in LA on environmental issues. And they'll be focusing, two of these folks will be focusing on Cool Blocks. So I'm very, very, very excited about how that will help us get the word out and do bigger, deeper work. So stay tuned for that. Also, we'll be talking at the Congress of Neighborhoods on September 24th about how Cool Blocks can help us get to carbon neutrality by 2030, which is why Cool Blocks exist. That's a primary reason where we have cool blocks. Okay, advocacy. So I think I've told you, I know I told you folks, we lost the effort on the LA River that came up in the conversation with O'Farrell and Soto Martinez this evening. But I'm very happy to be able to report that LA Waterkeeper and the Center for Biological Diversity are suing the county. So I'm thrilled because I'm mad. We just, you know, advocacy committee has not talked about the fact yet that the public comment has been restricted with no notice, but I really want us to get to that. Next regular meeting, so we're going to have, as I mentioned already, we're going to have a special meeting to speak specifically about the zoo. The next regular meeting might be the 18th. It will not be, usually we meet the first Sunday of the month, but that's Labor Day weekend, so we will not meet that evening. Okay, that's enough on us. Dan.
Hello. So the oil well phase out thing is very exciting. I'm very, very happy about this. I'm definitely a glass half full sort of guy. So I'm hoping that we can help make this happen. And I think August 30th would be a good time for us to show up and give public comment. So the other news is LADWP's strategic long range power plan is about, the draft version is about to come out, and the DWP is going to have public outreach meetings on the 30th, the 1st, and the 7th. The short version of the plan is they're building enough solar and wind and batteries to power the city without fossil fuels about 97% of the time by 2030. And they really are speeding that up. The other 3% of the time is when there isn't enough sun and wind and batteries to keep the lights on and the refrigerators cool. And during those times, they are going to have the existing 4 power plants around as a backup for those events. As they refurbish them, starting with scattergood, anything they refurbish from here on out, they're going to make it so it can also burn hydrogen. But basically, it almost doesn't matter whether they burn hydrogen or natural gas, because they'll be running such a small percent of the time, in my opinion. So that's sort of the news. We're going to be talking about this stuff on Tuesday. I invite you all to come and put in your 2 cents. Thank you.
Thank you, Dan. Okay, Muriel, transportation.
It was a relatively low-key meeting. We had discussed some things at the state level, but I grew some concerns about it reaching locally. But yeah, September, there should be some presentations coming up. And yeah, just stay tuned. I'll just, whoever's on the transportation committee listserv will get an email, as well as people who are interested, who would like to email me. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Muriel. Trees, Charles is stepping up for Joanne, who's on vacation.
Yeah, there's not going to be a meeting. A traditional meeting in the bi-monthly schedule would be in September, but instead, Joanne wants to invite you to come to the Neighborhood Council Congress and hear both her session and mine. They haven't scheduled the times yet. I'm really hoping that we're not competing with one another at the same time. But hers is going to be about how to get street trees and plant street trees and take care of street trees. Mine is going to be an advocacy conversation about native landscaping, including native trees, and why that's important and what we need to do as advocates to focus on that going forward. So please come. We dig having you there.
All right, thank you. All right, now folks, it's time for any announcements, if anybody has any. I have one. I'll start. I think our next meeting is September 11th. I think we're going to have a presentation again, a brief presentation, and then a vote on democracy vouchers, which you might have heard in the conversation with the CD13 candidates. We are now being asked if we will formally support the effort. So I want to get your folks' vote on that. The advocacy committee was in support, but frankly, the advocacy committee was, it was a bit of a mixed vote, which really surprised and confused me, to be honest. So I would like everybody to have an opportunity to ask some questions and to make sure that we may have an informed decision on that next time. And I'm hoping that we will have another candidate forum for the city controller, which is the race is now between current Councilmember Paul Koretz and the challenger, or not the challenger, because they're both challenger. They're both going for an open seat now, and Kenneth Mejia. We have reached out to those campaigns. We have not heard back from either one, is my understanding. Is that correct, Muriel? Okay, so, but, you know, so we'll keep, we'll try to make that happen. That's our hope for next month. Any other announcements? Glenn, I know you're always good for an announcement. You can't disappoint.
I put it in chat, but
Oh,
so since you mentioned the Congress of Neighborhoods several times, the registration is going to open the very end of August, beginning of September. So just watch for that in your communication that you get from the e-blast from the Congress and also from Department of Neighborhood Empowerment. But it would be great to register sooner rather than later so they have a sense of how they're doing. Thanks.
and it's still via Zoom. We're still not going to back in person, just so you know, in case you're wondering.
Where's the link to the evaluation, Lisa?
Oh, thank you. I did put one in. Thank you, Muriel. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let me put, I pasted it. I mean, I wanted to send it one more time.
Yeah, just at the very end, so it's like
Yes, thank you. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Because yeah, I didn't get it in earlier, so a lot of people who left will never be able to tell us what they thought. Any other announcements? Okay. Wow, it's only 8:23, but I think we're done. This is I think this is a first. This is sort of strange, but it's not a bad thing. We are ending early. Thank you everybody for joining, and we look forward to seeing you soon.